Okay, welcome to what was a live stream. I'm still going to do it live. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see your comments. We've just had some technical difficulties, not a big deal though. Let's walk through the new certified vocational rehabilitation occupational therapist credentials. Okay, comment period for ACVREP is currently open and it's open until January 30th. If you want to leave a comment for ACVREP, you can go to comments@acvrep.org. They have specifically put out a notice saying we are not interested in your comments about whether or not we should have this. We are interested in help us make these standards the best possible. I've already recorded this on YouTube. I apologize for the technical issues. We will be working on that behind the scenes. However, for right now, let's actually break this down. Hopefully my video still looks good because I'm just going to record it in Zoom because I'm used to Zoom and apparently it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Okay, let's go through this. So, first and foremost, what are we going to be talking about today? Today, we are talking about what is the role that's proposed for the CVROTs. We're also going to be talking about the scope of practice as well as the competency checklist. We're going to go through all of that and we're going to stop specifically at the O&M portion. And then we're also going to talk about the eligibility criteria. And if I can, I'd like to just look at the eligibility criteria for the CVROTs and the O&M. We'll see if we get there. And then, of course, if you want to leave a comment on this video, I would love to hear what your honest thoughts are. And I'll, at the very end, share my honest thoughts. So we're going to scroll a little bit. Sorry about that. So first, we're going to go to page 4. You want to check out the table of contents. This is a 73-page document, but it's all bulleted, so it's pretty easy. But they start off with the FAQ, so you can go through and read all about this. It really does a great job of answering a lot of people's questions. So what is the role of the CVROT? First, it starts off with the CVROT is going to build on the knowledge of a generalist OT. Let's stop there. What is a generalist OT? A generalist OT is somebody who's gone through the OT program and has graduated. Now, for occupational therapists, their profession is a little bit different. They go through their occupational therapy program and then they work for X amount of hours and then they can choose tracks of specialties through the association, the American Occupational Therapy Association, AOTA. Some of those already include low vision, as you'll see, and some of them probably already include other things that we also have a little bit of scope of practice within. So for our profession, right, we might become teachers and then add O&M. We might do other things and then add O&M as a graduate later. Or if you're like me, you started as a TVI O&M and then just didn't teach TVI. Or this is it. Where we go? There's nowhere else for us. But what ACVREP is doing is opening up another certification, another track for occupational therapists. So that's a little bit about how their profession works so that you have a little bit of an understanding. So this is going to be an advanced education and training related to vision impairment. These OTs specialize in analyzing the complex and dynamic interactions involved in the rehabilitation process by adapting environments and tasks, training in the use of compensatory strategies, access and assistive technology, adaptive equipment, and development of positive coping strategies. CVROTs will also provide rehabilitative interventions to optimize functional visual skills, visual processing, and the use of non-visual strategies. Okay, you can go through in order to earn this certification. They must have 2 years of experience as a generalist OT, meet specific education and training requirements, complete a mentorship program, demonstrate key competencies, and pass an exam. Sounds very similar to what we all already do. I want to go down to page 11 now. Excuse my scroll. I'm going to try to go slowly enough so that way you can see this. But I really don't care about occupational therapy terminology. Okay, scope of practice. I care about this. What are you guys going to be doing? So it says that the CVROT designation is for the occupational therapist who has pursued additional education, training, and experience in the field of vision rehabilitation, enabling them to work with adults with visual impairment and/or blindness. The CVROT must successfully pass a rigorous exam, demonstrating their competence to work with adults across a broad range of environments, including neurological deficits, low vision ranging from mild to profound, and blindness. The CVROT's knowledge of visual impairment and blindness informs all areas of their practice as an occupational therapist certified in the field of vision rehabilitation. Then it goes on to talk about what occupational therapy is, what they do. It also then goes on to talk about where they typically work and what environments they work, and more about what they do here. In their practice, CVROTs address not only visual impairment and/or blindness, but also physical, psychological, cognitive, sensory, perceptual, and psychosocial aspects of performance in a variety of contexts and environments. This then goes into what environments, acute care, inpatient rehab, subacute rehab, outpatient home, community, independent living, assisted living. A lot of these places, we are not there. And somebody mentioned that in one of the Facebook posts. And that's true. We aren't. We're not on the medical model as of right now. Give us 20 years, you guys. We're coming up. Okay. The CVROT is bound by the Code of Ethics of the Occupational Therapy Profession and those established by ACVREP for the CVROT included in the ethics standards, which include but are not limited to occupational therapy standards of practice, statutes, regulations, and payer policies. Okay. We've got provision of care, normal stuff. Then, are you hitting for the long haul? Go take a break. We'll come back. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to be here for a minute. We are scrolling down. You can read all of these here. So as I was reading through, right, I want to make sure that we stop at the O&M portion. We're going to go down to page 37, the competency checklist. And there's been a lot of talk about scope creep. There's a lot of talk also about scope creep in the future, coming down to kids, which I'm not going to get into because that's not here right now. But I want to see, is there scope creep for these OTs? Are they allowed to teach cane skills? And in the documents above, you can read that no, they're not. But what does that actually look like? Like check mark, yes, no. What do they need to be able to prove their competency in order to even sit for the exam? Because remember, this competency checklist is what you had to fill out, or your mentor had to fill out when you did your internship, saying like, yes, they can teach this, they can teach this, they can teach this. Okay, so we've got the rules, regulations here, but this one is very interesting, and I don't know if ACVREP has changed theirs for O&M, but I like the fact that it delineates between low vision, profound vision or blindness, neurological visual impairment, and then area for comments. Let's dive into it. Verification methodology, pretty typical, ones that we've already done. Okay, I'm gonna go kind of slow here. So feel free to write your notes. What I have done is I'm using this software called DocHub. It's free and I can write on it. So, and it's a PDF. Okay, so for screening, assessment, and evaluation, here are the things that they need to be able to do. Administer, score, interpret, and apply the results of occupational performance evaluations. Use task activity analysis to determine the client factors and context necessary for occupational performance. Identify, address, and educate or train clients and caregivers and team members on the impact of comorbidities, changes to body structure and function combined with visual impairment and blindness. Assess and identify client factor and context and their impact on performance. Assess core cognitive and perceptual skills and identify the dynamic interaction between cognition, perception, perceptual processing, and vision. Assess motor function and identify the dynamic interaction between motor and vision. Okay, Side note, this is so funny. No, I shouldn't say it, but when I was in my 20s, I had these like file folders and my assessments, I put this word. Anyway, one of my best friends found it. Oh, okay. And I had to change the label of my file folder. They need to be able to administer, score, interpret, and apply results of a comprehensive visual function assessment to establish client-driven intervention. They also need to be able to adapt assessment procedures to accommodate comorbidities and have an understanding of the intrinsic and extrinsic factors that impact the rehabilitation process. Okay, we're going to go into competencies now. Here, this part just says competency. They also need to be able to interpret and synthesize the evaluation results, including those from referral sources and other team members, to synthesize rehabilitation results to recommend accommodations to clients, caregivers, employers, and relevant others to maximize independence and safety within their environmental context. Now, as far as intervention goes, we have the application of foundational knowledge to maximize occupational performance here. So the goal is to maximize occupational performance. Makes sense. They're occupational therapists. They need to be able to select tailored interventions to address barriers to performance and continually analyze and modify these strategies based on client progress, to train in compensatory and non-visual strategies, to address the visual field deficits, maximizing the use of residual vision through education, remediation, and training. They also need to be able to apply basic principles of optics and train in the use of optical devices not applicable for profound vision loss or neurological visual impairments. Educate in task environmental adaptation using non-optical strategies. Train in strategies for photosensitivity and glare control. Train in the use of environmental and task modification, such as illumination, contrast enhancement, and pattern modification. Train in sensory substitution strategies. Train in cognitive substitution strategies, organizational methods, and demonstrate the ability to modify equipment, devices, the environment to reduce risk of injury and improve safety. We're still here in the application of foundational knowledge to maximize occupational performance. They also need to be able to apply and train on proper ergonomics to prevent complications from secondary health conditions. A lot of people sit down at desks a lot and it hurts their back. One example. To train clients and caregivers in self-advocacy methods for effective communication with team members, insurance, and relevant others to relay health and vision changes. Identifying, referring to health management specialists, vision rehabilitation professionals, and relevant others to ensure comprehensive services. Train clients and caregivers to use assistive technology. Modify personal devices, visual assistive devices, and wearable technology by taking into consideration all client factors. Administer, score, interpret, and apply results of standardized and non-standardized reading and writing assessments. Apply visual skills in training and preparation for reading and writing. Sequence optical and non-optical strategies for reading and writing. Train in the use of technology to read, write, and access information. Effectively assess and refer a client for instruction in Braille literacy. This one has to do with us. Ability to effectively assess and refer a client for instruction in Braille literacy. So they're not allowed to teach. What they're allowed to assess, I'm not 100% sure. Train adults in compensatory strategies, visual and non-visual, to increase independence in occupations in home and community. Assess environments for accessibility and safety. Refer to and collaborate with other professionals, including nationally certified orientation and mobility specialists and physical therapists, to promote and improve occupational performance related to functional and community mobility. Okay, are you still with me? Go ahead and take a minute to take your notes, and then we'll come on back. Now, again, you can help them in any way. If you see grammar mistakes, if you see things that don't fully line up or are talked about in multiple places, all of these things are things that they want to know. If you'd like to see more standards, if you'd like to see less standards, if you think something is redundant, these are all things to share with ACVREP. We're still in foundational knowledge here. Demonstrate an understanding of the purpose of the long cane as it relates to safety during occupational performance. Since it has to do with O&M, I'm going to just give you a second to think. Okay, we'll move on. Train clients, caregivers, and team members in human guide technique. So train clients, caregivers, and other team members in human guide technique. Train in appropriate assistive devices, compensatory strategies, environmental modifications, and fall prevention strategies to promote safe and independent functional and community mobility during daily occupations. Give you a second there. To demonstrate the ability to educate or train in appropriate assistive devices, compensatory strategies, environmental modifications, and fall prevention strategies to promote safe and independent functional and community mobility during daily occupations. We'll move on. Demonstrate the ability to educate and train in driving cessation strategies when driving is no longer an option. Demonstrate an understanding of the components of a pre-driving screen to determine visual functions as they relate to the activity of driving if they have severe visual impairment, which is 20/500 in this document, then that's not applicable. Knowledge of bioptic driving and appropriately refer when necessary, also not applicable if you have 20/500. Adapt medication management techniques by training in the use of visual and non-visual strategies and compensatory techniques to reduce medication error. Training compensatory techniques to promote the use of adaptive equipment for safety and health management. Promote and adapt health management and wellness behaviors, including physical activity, healthy meal prep, energy conservation, and self-monitoring by training in the use of visual and non-visual strategies and compensatory techniques. Adapt diabetes self-management techniques by training in the use of visual and non-visual strategies and compensatory techniques. Educate, train clients and caregivers on effective problem solving to address adverse health complications. Facilitate referrals for services as needed, ensuring interdisciplinary care and comprehensive support. Okay, give you a second to just write down your thoughts because we still got a ways to go. You with me still? Pause this video and we'll keep going when you're ready. We're still in the application of foundational knowledge to maximize occupational performance. They need to be able to demonstrate the ability to identify and educate clients and caregivers on the stages of adjustment to visual impairment and blindness as related to the models of grief and loss and its impact on the rehabilitation process. To screen for adjustment issues secondary to visual impairment and blindness. To identify when a referral or mental health service provider is necessary. Demonstrate the importance of interpersonal skills through the use of trusting dialogue and education on the impact of visual impairment and psychosocial well-being. Educate and train in coping methods to alleviate the potential impact of vision loss on psychosocial well-being, and to determine the presence of Charles-Bonnet syndrome and educate in compensatory strategies to manage the condition. We're going to keep going because this is now moving on. Competencies for working with individuals with neurological visual impairments. We've got just a few in the assessment evaluation, and then it'll go into the intervention. This is for people with neurological visual impairments. Ability to perform and interpret clinical and or standardized assessments of ocular position, movement, and teaming or binocular function. Perform and interpret clinical assessment of neuropattern visual field defects. Demonstrate the knowledge of relevant components of evaluation to assess client candidacy for the therapeutic use of PRISM due to neuropattern visual field deficit or unilateral visual neglect. The ability to perform and interpret clinical assessments of unilateral visual neglect, incorporating consideration of dimension, which would be personal, peripersonal, extrapersonal, and modality affected. Visual, auditory, tactile, somatosensory, and motor. and demonstrate knowledge and assessment and ability to describe salient clinical features of diplopia. Okay, just a few more in assessment evaluation. This is still for neurological visual impairment. Perform and interpret clinical and or standardized assessment for visual motor integration and visual perceptual skills. Interpret clinical and or standardized assessment of visual vestibular function. Demonstrate knowledge of salient features of cortical visual impairment during the evaluation process. Demonstrate the knowledge of and ability to interpret clinical assessment of visual midline shift syndrome during the evaluation process. Now we're moving on to the intervention part of neurological visual impairment. Demonstrate the ability to instruct client with neuropattern VFDs regarding organized visual scanning strategies for far, near, and immediate spaces. Demonstrate the knowledge of appropriate use of prisms designed for use in conjunction with scanning to compensate for neuropattern visual field defects and improve awareness of neglected visual space, recenter perceived midline, facilitate NPC, or promote fusion. Demonstrate knowledge of appropriate interventions to support the use of residual vision for students with cerebral visual impairment, CVI. Demonstrate knowledge of appropriate compensatory strategies to effectively mitigate adverse effects of diplopia in function. Select and implement evidence-informed interventions to address UVN, incorporating both top-down and bottom-up approaches. Select and implement interventions to remediate and or compensate for affected visual motor and visual perception skills. Demonstrate knowledge of interventions to remediate or compensate for impaired visual vestibular function. Okay, that was neurological visual impairments. Now we're going into working with individuals with profound visual impairments. And we just have a few here. Demonstrate working knowledge in the blindness system as defined by vision professionals, advocacy organizations, and public policies that address the needs of people who are blind. Demonstrate the ability to educate and train in the use of uncontracted braille to create labeling systems. Demonstrate appropriate etiquette when interacting with people who are blind or visually impaired to include, but not limited to, reference to the white cane, guide dog protocols, human guide techniques, communication methods, and assistance offered. Demonstrate knowledge of physical, sensory, cognitive, and emotional skills required to effectively navigate indoor and outdoor obstacles using a white cane, guide dog, or GPS technology to compensate for visual impairment and make appropriate referrals to orientation and mobility services. Take a second here because that directly affects O&M. And I know that a lot of people have had a lot of questions about scope creep. Here it is. Demonstrate the knowledge of physical, sensory, cognitive, and emotional skills required to effectively navigate indoor and outdoor obstacles using a white cane, guide dog, or GPS technology to compensate for visual impairment and make appropriate referrals to O&M services. Demonstrate the ability to effectively explain the difference between a screen reader, dictation, and AI voice assistants to control smart devices. Demonstrate effective clinical reasoning to transition clients through assistive software and hardware options to accommodate visual decline, screen modification, screen magnification. See what I mean? Look at that. With speech and screen reader. This is the kind of stuff we need to help them with. Demonstrate the ability to educate and train in the use of technology to read, write, and assess information. Demonstrate the ability to educate and train in the use of tactile indicators, accessible labeling systems, and organizational strategies to foster independence for people who are blind. Okay, we're wrapping this up with professional practice standards. Again, pause this video if you need to, come back to it, take your notes, grab a PDF, a thing that you can write on PDFs with software. Documents medical necessity to procure reimbursement for visual impairment, identifies payer sources for services and educates the client about these resources, verbalizes the understanding of various service delivery models providing vision rehabilitation services to adults, exemplifies professional interactions grounded in cultural humility, self-reflection, and critique after interacting with diverse individuals. So, what do you think? Leave me a comment. Was it as scary as you thought? Are you relieved? Are you still like, no, this isn't a good idea? You can tell me whatever you want. They only want to hear about the standards, but you and I can have a conversation here. Okay, let's go into the eligibility criteria. This is where things get interesting. Code of ethics is going to be all of your normal stuff. You guys can go ahead and read that, but what we are going to, sorry, here we go. Eligibility criteria. Okay, let's break this down. Eligibility to sit for a certifying exam in categories 1 through 5 are these, okay? There are 6 categories, but in categories 1 through 5, we're here. So they need to have all supporting documents. They need to have 3,000 hours of experience in the past 5 years as an OT working with adults. Clinical competency evaluation form completed by the mentor. Great. We just read what that is. Registration licensure by regulatory body per requirements in that country, state, or province. And they must meet all requirements A through D above and any additional requirements listed in each category below. So when we look at categories here, what we're actually looking at is how the person came into this profession or this lineage, right? They're not all the same person. So when we think about categories with ACVREP, we're thinking about the recertification. That is in this document. I'm not going to go over it. That is for another day and time. But for today, what we are looking at are the categories of what their background is. So I will break that down for you right now. So their background, first one, if they have their generalist degree, they're already an OT, and they go to a formal low vision rehabilitation education from a university graduate level degree certification program. They can sit for the certifying exam if they have all of these here. Okay. Proof of graduate certificate for occupational therapists in low vision rehabilitation or master's degree for occupational therapists in low vision rehabilitation. They need 175 mentorship hours, 105 direct service, 70 indirect. Believe these next 3 bullets are within those. At minimum, 24 of the 105 need to be for direct service, need to be with profound visual impairment, and 16 indirect. Then 24 direct service and 16 indirect service with neurological visual impairments. And they have to be in a variety of experiences. Second category is autodidactic. I had to look up what that means. It means self-taught. So I think that this means that they went to school to be an OT, and then they have those 3,000 hours working with adults, and they're going to sit for the exam. This is what they need as far as their internship goes. So they still have to go through the competency, right? This is just saying, I've already had my 3,000 hours, and now I want to add on this certification. What do I need to do? This is it. They need to have 350 hours. It's the same amount of hours, at least when I went through my O&M program, when I didn't have anything else underneath my belt. 210 direct service and 140 indirect. Of those, 50 need to be direct service with profound vision impairment, 50 need to be direct service with neurological visual impairment, and 32 of indirect for both in a variety of environments. Category 3 is an OT who holds the ACVREP certification of a CVRT, Certified Vocational Rehabilitation Therapist. They already got their OT. They already are voc rehab therapists. Now they're adding a third one. What do we do with these people? Excuse me, what do they need? They need a minimum of 24 direct service hours and 16 indirect, working with low vision, people with low vision, and people with neurological visual impairments. Category 4 is OT. They already have their OT, and or they already have their certified low vision therapist. So already have OT, already have a specialization in low vision, or they already have the specialty certification in low vision that's already in place by AOTA. They will need to have all these as above. Within their hours, they need to have 24 direct service and 16 indirect with people who have a profound visual impairment. So it's a little different than above, and neurological impairment. Then category 5 is an OT who holds ACVREP certification of comms. So they have OT and their comms already. They need to have 24 direct service hours and 16 direct service hours in 4 categories. Providing independent living skills instruction to people with low vision, providing independent living skills instruction to people with profound visual impairment, and providing instruction in use of low vision devices, working with people with visual impairment, with a low vision impairment, and work 24 direct service and 16 indirect, working with people with a neurological visual impairment. So they have to have 4 different areas, again, slightly different. Now there's category 6, okay? That's an OT who holds multiple low vision or blindness certifications. So it could be an OT who holds a certification as one of the following combinations. They have ACVREP, CVRT, and CVLT, comms and CVLT, comms and CVRT, CVRT and the AOTA one, SCLV, or comms and SCLV. They need a minimum of 24 hours direct, I would take it, and 6. Okay, I'm going to be writing in about this. 16 indirect? I don't know. I can't understand this. Whatever. With people with neurological visual impairment. So I don't know if this is indirect, 16 direct. It's not following their pattern, and it's written incorrectly. Okay. So pretty standard. Think about your thoughts. Do they need to have more? How are they going to get these? I don't know. This is for you to think about. Mentorship requirements. Here is for categories 1, 2, and 5. Okay. For categories 3 and 4, only direct service hours are applicable. So for categories 3 and 4, they already have an ACVREP certification. Right here, or that's the AOTA low vision certification. Okay, so they're already dual certified. Love you guys. I don't know how you do dual certification like that. I guess I did, but still. Okay, so they need to have all hours should show diversity in your knowledge, skills, and experiences, demonstrate clinical experience with a broad range of clients, and then mentorship hours. The mentor will need to be somebody that is a CVROT. 60% will be direct service, 40% will be indirect. You can scroll through. And then we've got eligibility for certification for the criteria and eligibility of certification during the beta testing period. Okay. Then it goes into recertification criteria. I'm not even going to get into that. So take this time, sit down, think about your thoughts. You can go to the ACVREP website and download the document. It's really easy to find. Write on it, figure out what you think about, is there the scope creep? If so, is there a way to prevent it? Do we need more standards that prevent something? This is all up to you. If you have any thoughts, or if you think that things need to be put in place to prevent or open up, or however the case may be, this is the time for you to think about that. ACVREP is welcoming and asking for comments until January 30th, 2025. That's in 6 days. So I did this on a Friday specifically so that way you would have time over the weekend to figure out what you think. Leave a comment below. Let me know your like happy hour thoughts, right? Like you and I going to happy hour. I'd love to hear those thoughts. I'm not going to get into a feud about should this happen, should this not happen. That's not, we're past that. That's not really even a conversation we really need to get into. If you want to know my thoughts on this personally, I don't do any of that stuff. Like, what we just read is way beyond what I do. That is very OT. A lot of those words are very OT. I'm gonna have to Google a lot of stuff. And I'm going to sit down and the grammar is the grammar, okay? But really think about like, how can I get these OTs to support me a little bit more? 'Cause I want to be able to work with everybody. My thinking here is that we only have 4,324 or something like that O&Ms, certified O&Ms around the world. And we have a lot of people with visual impairments, and especially older people with visual impairments. And the things that they're talking about, an O&M wouldn't be called in for that. They wouldn't even know I exist. Like, think about Sally, your neighbor, right? She's 65, her vision's going, her family moves her into an assisted living facility. She's losing her independence. They don't even really think about us. But the OTs, they're already there. And yes, it's unfair that the OTs are there because they're medically billable and we're not. Like, I get that, right? That is another step we need to take. We need to figure out how to get in with the American Medical Association for sure, for sure. But if you think about how far our profession has come in the past 60 years, we had to figure out who we were. And we really have only figured that out in the past 30 something years. It took us about 40 years to figure out who even needs O&M. And now we're starting to really hone in on that and starting to see that we need different things. We're at capacity at our britches. And I think having people who have an understanding of what O&M is, but are not teaching cane skills, I think that could be a good thing. And that's just my opinion. Is there going to be scope creep? I don't know. But if there is, if this, VRT job comes into the school setting, then we figure that out at that time and we figure out how to train those people. My thinking is that instead of pushing them away, we build the bridge to train them because what we want is highly trained, highly qualified people. As O&Ms, we're always going to be here. And as O&Ms, we were always taught to work ourselves out of a job, right? So we will be fine. We will be fine. You will be fine. Trust in yourself to market yourself as a professional. That's part of the job of everybody. I don't know. I'm getting too far into it. Okay. We'll cut it off here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for allowing us to figure out these tech issues. We've got a little bit of work to do on the back end with that. This live was not nearly as easy as other ones have been in the past, and we will work through that. Not a big deal, but I appreciate your patience through all of this, and I appreciate you being here. Leave me a comment below if this was helpful for you. Like it. It takes 1 second and it allows the algorithm to know that like maybe other people might like it, maybe a small percentage, but still. And of course, if we're contributing to the impact that you're making in the lives of your learners, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us to grow and to know that we can reach you and that you'll be able to get the content instead of just being bombarded, especially if you share your devices with little children. The things that they get on this platform are crazy. I appreciate you and I look forward to hearing from you. And I hope you can take this information and use it to help you take a step forward into being a better teacher. Have a great weekend, y'all. Bye.